Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest on the line as season 12 begins.
Season 12.
Whoa. Hi, guys.
Doc, I think it's safe to say you have a successful talk show. Season 12, renewed for 2 more seasons. Congratulations. Star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame coming in 2021. Congratulations, sir.
Well, thank you, Charlamagne. It's been a blessing. As you know, it takes a lot of people pulling the oars. It's been it started, I remember I was doing towards the end of the Oprah shows that I used to do, and she was going to launch a show with me. And so we were talking about getting in my lane and making sure that I stayed focused on the audience. And what I realized is you absolutely have to stay laser focused on the audience, which is what you guys do so well. But you got to shift lanes once in a while as well, because medicine changes so darn quickly. But it's been a blast.
Mm-hmm. Doc, I want to ask you, Charlamagne, you know how Charlamagne flirts with us all the time.
Yeah.
This morning, Charlamagne sent me a text about how when he went to the doctor, he got his prostate exam and he had an orgasm. Is that normal?
That never happened.
There
was a guy in Jacksonville that happened to.
Well, it's an interesting problem because it's not really a problem. It's very common. But prostate has sensory fibers on it. So it does create orgasms. And some men enjoy that a lot. And it is something that is commonly reported. In fact, it sort of replaced the clitoris in females. That's where those nerves went. And there's a joke that which I can't tell in the air, but the proctologists say about why they use 2 fingers for rectal exams. And it has to do with that.
Why can't you say the joke? This is the Breakfast Club. You can say it here. If there's any place you can say it, you can say it. What is
All right. Why do proctologists use 2 fingers for rectal exams?
Why, Dr. Oz?
Second opinion.
That's on American Pie. Do you remember in American Pie when Stifler he got addicted to prostate exams?
That's right. But it's that whole part of the body is so erogenous and there's so much going on and we're so ashamed about it, which I don't know why, because if you actually understand how to excite each other, it makes everything a lot more fun in life.
Right.
But I think, as Angie, you'd speak to this a little bit, but we always, in the heat of passion, don't take time to figure it out. So take a moment when you're not right in the middle of it and just explore a little bit. Read up on anatomy. It'll help you a lot.
No, you're right. There's a doctor in Atlanta. They call him Dr. Future, and he always says, put your thumb in our butt.
Well,
and in his, apparently.
Future's a rapper, Doc. He's definitely not a doctor. Well, Future's a rapper, but I don't know about that, Charlamagne.
He did.
But when guys masturbate, do you guys put your fingers in your butt?
No.
not usually.
He said not usually.
No, all jokes aside.
Here we go. I like this. Here we go.
This is a serious question, and it's kind of around this topic. Colon cancer, right? I've been seeing a lot of people pass with colon cancer, and they've been getting younger and younger. And we've always been told historically get a colon check at 50. But now I'm hearing I should get it at 40. What do you think, Doc?
Well, African Americans have to get it earlier, at least by 45. And if you have a family history, someone in your family with colon cancer or polyps, 10 years before that. So I got on my show today, Mary Letourneau's husband, Billy Pulowal. And Mary Letourneau just died of colon cancer, but she was the school teacher. She was in her early 30s. She fell in love with her student, Billy. He was in 6th grade. And she ended up going to jail for that. And he's on the show just talking honestly about whether he thinks she was a pedophile or not, even though he married her and had 2 kids with her. And he just really thought about this a lot. It's a wonderful, very open discussion, but it only happened because his wife, Mary, died of colon cancer. And who would think a 50-year-old woman would die of colon cancer, but it happens.
Well, that's interesting. I can't wait to see what he has to say about that, because that was a huge story and it's been ongoing. So now, Dr. Oz, I want to ask you, are you going to get this vaccine for coronavirus when they come out with it, or do you feel like I'm going to wait?
No, I'm getting the vaccine without any question. And let's talk about vaccine.
Right away?
I'm not going to wait. I'll tell you what the issue. I just had the Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, on the show. I've been having the White House task force coming on just because we've become the de facto COVID-19 headquarters. So I'm just trying to get all the information out there so we can make educated decisions. And what the guy said was pretty clearly that we're going to be able to, the vaccine trial, the first of the 30,000 patient trials is finishing this week. And so they got to wait a couple of weeks to figure out if there are side effects, if it's dangerous, and if it works. But theoretically, by November, we're going to know if these vaccines work. And if that's the case, just now, before I got on air with you, the U.S. government released a plan to give vaccines to every American for free. The U.S. military is going to help distribute it to the local areas. So if you want it, you can get it. But to your point, about a third of the population is not interested in getting the vaccine, and it's especially high among African Americans. So Jerome Adams was saying, we don't have African Americans involved in the vaccine trial. Without that, we can't tell for sure if it's safe. So we got to get more African Americans in the trials, and then we got to get African Americans comfortable with the tests. So I said, what's the big deal here? Why is there so much resistance? And he went back, and as you know, the history of experimentation on blacks in America has understandably made people pretty paranoid about this. But then we got into this broader idea of health disparities. Now, I don't know if you know this, but one of Martin Luther King's big peeves was the greatest and worst form of racism was health disparities, because Black people can't get in the game if you're sitting on the sideline and in a wheelchair, right? You can't get on the playing field. And so I started looking at the numbers. And I don't know if you know this, but I mean, Black women having babies twice as likely to die than white women. Black babies twice as likely to die as white babies. But this is the part I didn't know. When a Black child is being taken care of by a Black doctor, it halves the chance of them dying compared to if they're getting taken care of by a white doctor. Now, that stunned me. And then one of my producers said something that just blew my mind, and I would love to hear what you guys think about this. Mm-hmm. She said it, and some of my guests said it as well. She said, the way that Black men see police is how Black women see doctors. And I got goosebumps because I had no idea there was that much of a gap that was occurring in the healthcare field between Black patients and white doctors.
Yeah, one of our good homegirls who comes on the show a lot, Lathan Thomas, they call her the Glow Maven, and she's a doula, and that's what she focuses on. She focuses on the Black maternal death rate. She actually helped my wife with our third child because I saw it firsthand. We're in the hospital in Jersey. I got money. I got insurance. The nurse was like, we don't have any more epidurals. Like, just straight up, we don't have any more. I'm like, what do you mean you don't have any more? So my wife had to have a natural childbirth just because they just didn't have any epidurals. They're like, oh, the baby's right there. You can just push it out. They just think that Black women are just stronger than white women.
Yeah, and I have a friend who comes on the show also, Coach Jessie, and she's a holistic doctor. And she went to the hospital. She actually had an aneurysm. And she went in there and she said her pain level was a level 10. And they tried to send her home from the hospital, but she knew enough about her body and about health to know this is not normal. And they kept on trying to send her home. And fortunately for her, she stayed there because she did end up having an aneurysm.
Wow. Well, you just point out pain is it something we've looked at in medicine, and it, without question, doctors think African Americans have a higher pain threshold than white people. And it reveals an implicit bias. And again, I'm pointing this out because doctors aren't in danger personally in taking care of patients. It's not like we're fearing for our lives and making mistakes. There's just an implicit bias. And you don't even realize it exists. My doctor friends are stunned with this data, stunned. When this last little bit came out about the race of the person taking care of you affecting your life, which brings me to the big campaign that we're involved in. It's hashtag more Black doctors. We got to have more Black doctors. 5% of doctors are Black. It's only, but Black's 13% of the population. It makes no sense. And it's very hard to cross that cultural divide if you don't understand that you're a patient. And so Health Corps, which you guys know, we've been teaching teens, especially teens of color, about health. Now I want to teach them to go into health. And Mike Bloomberg just gave $100 million to 4 Black universities to increase medical school enrollment. So we have to convince young Black people to think about careers in healthcare so that we can get better quality healthcare for Black people.
Yeah. Now I want to go back to the vaccine. Now you mentioned the vaccine before. Now, do you think it's long enough to see what the side effects are? Charlamagne and I were talking to a doctor last week.
Dr. Stu.
And he was saying he would never take it right away. He said he would wait probably to February, March to take it. He said the first batch, he just wouldn't trust taking it. So I think with us, is sometimes we get so many different opinions, we don't know who to believe. Like, so you would be comfortable with not necessarily knowing all the side effects, not knowing how it affects people and all that?
Well, when you have 30,000 people in each of these trials, and there are several trials, so in aggregate, it's more than 100,000 people who are getting these vaccines with careful follow-up for side effects. I don't think it's an experiment. And by the way, you're not going to get to go first anyway. The first people who get the vaccines are going to be healthcare providers and vulnerable populations, people in nursing homes, folks who have multiple medical problems. So it's going to be rolled out so that the few vaccines that we have are given to people who benefit the most from it. So you're not going to get a chance to get it until probably March anyway. That stated, when it comes, I don't want a lot of confusion with people second guessing whether it's safe or not. And all 9 of the main companies, that the pharmaceutical companies, got together and wrote a letter saying we are not even going to submit for approval. We're not going to let the government get our vaccine until we're comfortable that it's safe. And they're not going to ruin their businesses racing to get a vaccine out. Listen, I understand completely why people are nervous. They're nervous because it's Operation Warp Speed, right? They're nervous because it must have been rushed, because that's how we got it out in a few months, where it normally takes years. It's rushed because they don't trust the White House. There's lots of
election year.
The election year.
Yeah, they're politicizing it. I think it's a trope.
Yeah, but Charlamagne, when you mix politics and medicine, you know what you get? Politics. Mm-hmm. Medicine gets suffocated. And I can't let that happen, because this is a medical issue. And I especially don't want to hurt people who end up getting COVID-19 as an infection in December and January and February, who wouldn't have if we just allowed this to move forward. Now, again, the vaccine is not going to be administered till after the election anyway. So either way, I don't think the fact that you're getting it is going to be political, but getting ready to give it should not be politicized.
Yeah, but when Trump can say, hey, we created a vaccine, and in a rapid amount of time, we're going to have the vaccine ready, it's something that could cause people to go vote for him.
Yeah, but Trump's not making the vaccine. Pharmaceutical companies all over the world are. Charlamagne, this past weekend, the Chinese announced that they have already given hundreds of thousands of their doctors and nurses their vaccine. So there are vaccines already out there. Other parts of the world are going to start using this. This is a bigger than America issue. These companies are not working in isolation only in America, right? They're working, the AstraZeneca vaccine is a British vaccine. There's 2 big Chinese vaccines. We've got our own vaccines in America, which we need to have because American companies will make vaccines that Americans can get first. The Chinese are not going to give us their vaccine until they immunize their own people.
And Trump supporters not going to take no Chinese vaccine after all of the dirt he's threw on China.
I don't know. If a vaccine is proven to be safe and the company making it is reputable, I would take the vaccine. And I think that's the bigger message for all of us. Look, there's some things that politics are always going to be involved in, but medicine cannot be destroyed by politics. That's where you start paying the price in lives. We've already lived through that. I don't want to make it any worse. The vaccine is a process that, yes, has been politicized, but whether it works or not is not a political decision. The numbers are going to be right there, black and white. Last week, they shut down one of the trials for a couple of days because they're worried about one single case. One person had a bad outcome, and they shut it down to double check that it wasn't.
What that outcome was? Because I know they said,
she had an infection of her spinal column, which is a bad complication. But thankfully, she apparently is doing okay. She's a British woman, but they were worried about it because you don't want a lot of people having spinal column infections from a vaccine.
Now, how do we treat the flu now? Now, do we treat the flu differently now? Because now the symptoms of the flu is the same as the symptoms for COVID. Do we treat that any differently now? And do you advise people to take the flu shot?
The flu shot's already out. I would definitely take it for 2 reasons. One, although half the population takes the flu shot normally, this year, let's make it more, because you don't want to get confused about whether your symptoms are the flu or COVID-19. And that would be horrible, because then you go to the hospital with flu symptoms and you get COVID-19, because you can get them both together at the same time. They're different viruses. And that will be really a problem for a lot of people. So go out and get the vaccine. Now, the good news is we're probably not going to have much of a flu season, because what we've seen in Asia already is because everyone's wearing masks and socially distancing, they're not giving each other the flu either. So hopefully it won't be a bad season, but why take a chance? Get the darn vaccine. It's already out there. That's not an experiment. That's been around for a long time. And that's something that most Americans ought to be able to do just to protect the rest of us. And the other thing about vaccine, real quick, everyone doesn't have to get a vaccine. I don't want people to feel they're stupid or bad or dumb or conspiracy theorists for not getting the vaccine. But we need to get enough people vaccinated so we get herd immunity. So we need about 70% of the population to get vaccinated. I think we could do that without too much difficulty.
Now, is the nasal spray accurate? Just one last question of the flu. Is the nasal spray accurate, or should you take a shot?
No, if the nasal spray works if you're in the right age group. So nasal spray is an active virus, so if you're already immunocompromised, you can't get it because you don't want the virus to spread in your body. But it does work well in young people. The shot seems to be the more reliable way to go in general.
Okay. Doc, I want to see you get the vaccine live on your show. And after you do it, I'll wait a couple months and see what happens. If I see some wings growing out your back, I'm going to say the vaccine has some side effects.
All right, I'll make a deal with you. Seriously. I'll get the vaccine live on my show. I'm actually going to have Jerome Adams give me the flu vaccine live on the show later this month. Yeah, so I'll get COVID-19 vaccine as soon as I'm allowed to get it. Then you're going to come on my show and you're going to get it a month after I get it. If I'm still alive a month later, you'll get it.
No.
I think that's a good deal. And Doc, you got to tell Charlamagne.
Charlamagne, I'll throw a rectal exam in.
He might come down. Because Charlamagne got his anal swab for his COVID-19 test. And I was telling him that's not right.
Shut up. That never happened. Doc, what do you think about the kids going back to school? Because you got in a little shit early this year. But what do you think now? Do you think we made the right decision? Because my kids are in school. I put mine in school.
Yeah, I put my grandkids in school. Listen, I quoted a Lancet article that argued that we did not make society that much safer than as much as we thought anyway by taking kids out of school. And people got mad at me for talking about it. And I respect that it's a sensitive topic, but I don't want us to ignore the harm we do to our kids by not allowing them to be in school. And I also appreciate there are risks. There absolutely are risks, but how big are those risks? Well, they're definitely significant for teachers and for parents and grandparents. But I got to say, for most kids, if we can follow CDC guidelines and make sure that not everyone gets sick all at once, that the homerooms are broken up and the kids go to school at different times, leave school at different times, that we're better off having our kids in school. It disproportionately hurts poor kids and kids of color when they're out of school. It hurts the parents, and the kids don't have backup plans. And the worst thing we can do, I think, is half-time in school, half-time out of school. Because you know what happens? The days the kids in school, they might get infected. But then the days they're not in school, they go to daycare, they might get infected there, right? They don't just stay at home. They play with their friends. They go with other groups of people they weren't normally exposed to. So you actually increase the chance that the virus will go through the community. So I think you either go to school or you don't go to school. And if you're going to go to school, which, again, my grandkids are doing, then you break up the classes in ways that you keep them as safe as possible so they're less likely to be hunkered down on top of each other. But they get free meals. They get checked for abuse that might be going on at home. They get mentoring. And most importantly, they're not scarred for the rest of their life thinking they'd have to run away from a problem.
You know, I want to ask you, right, because I heard what you said. And what you said, you quoted the Lancet, and you said some folks. You never said you. Yeah. Do you think it was the platform you was on because you was on Sean Hannity? Or do you think it was social media? Which caused the context to be lost in that, you think?
No, I think it was social media, and the platform doesn't help. But I didn't get I didn't get a lot of feedback for 2 days. I didn't even know it was an issue. Mm-hmm. And then 2 days later, someone saw it and got upset about it. And I understand why people are not agreeing with me. I just think we need to be able to talk to each other, and we can be angry about stuff, but we got to go talk to each other. And that's one of the challenges with the council culture, because you take people who are doing their best to make whatever they're trying to do, and you start saying, well, you don't get to say that. And the best way to get rid of a bad idea is talk about it. Because then the fact that it's bad becomes evident. Everyone starts to say, yeah, it was a bad idea. And that's what made you, what has made your show iconic is you talk about everything. Yeah, bad idea. No, the bad idea comes on the show. You beat up the bad idea, and people say that was a dumb idea. I'm not going to say that. I don't want to sound dumb by saying that idea in public. Whereas if it's said in secrecy in the corners, people start repeating it. They think it's real because no one's able to challenge it because no one's saying it publicly.
And bad ideas from the host as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All of us. Look, if you have a lot of ideas, guarantee some of them are bad.
Absolutely.
Now, Dr. Oz, what are some more things you'll be touching on season 12?
Well, I'm very passionate about some of the things you guys have been talking through. So Jacob Blake's family is coming on tomorrow's show. And, I am going to go over what happened to him, where the gunshots are. I actually, he was shot through this first and fourth lumbar spine, which is why he'll most likely be paralyzed. Although the family is saying, despite the odds, they're praying for success. But what mostly impressed me about Jacob Blake was, and his father's the same name as the son, is that he said he wants peace. He does not want his son, and his son said the same thing, causing violence. Quite the opposite. They want to make sure that this never happens to anybody else again, and we have no more violence. And Daniel Prude, whose family's coming on, remember, he was the gentleman whose brother called for 911 because he was having a mental breakdown, and the cops came and they put a spit hood on him and killed him, while restraining him. And this is an example where mental health issues are being dealt with by criminal justice systems. And, Charlamagne, we've talked about this on my show with you a bunch of times. We cannot criminalize mental health issues. We cannot criminalize drug issues. It doesn't work. And so we got to get smarter in how we deploy our resources and get the right people taking care of the right people at the right time. the brother was so emotional. He blames himself for calling the 911 on Daniel Prude because he had no idea cops would come and do that to him. And I felt for him.
Damn.
And, I'm sure right now a lot of people are having all kinds of mental health issues just with coronavirus. I have a friend who had a really bad breakdown, and they did call the cops on her just because being in the house and then going through whatever personal issues you might have in a relationship and having minimal contact with people outside of your house can be really trying for a lot of people. Even if certain things have never shown up before, it's like a perfect storm.
It is the biggest problem we have created with this virus. Our brains got to the size they are to be able to deal with each other. Literally, the prefrontal cortex, we need a brain the size of a walnut to go hunting. You need your brain this big to be able to look at each other in the eyes and read each other's facial expressions, to hear subtle tones and what you're really trying to say as you speak. And so when we isolate each other, we get depression, we get anxiety, which is skyrocketing high. We don't feel like we're raindrops falling into the ocean of humanity. In addition, you're appropriately fearful of a virus that could hurt you. And the people who pay the biggest price are the older folks, actually, because they need the chi, the life force from youth. There's a big argument now that Alzheimer's is made a lot worse by COVID. My mom, I haven't talked about this, but I'm going to, I'll share with you guys. My mom lives in Turkey, was diagnosed 2 weeks ago with COVID, and she has Alzheimer's. And she got, really sick for a day or two. They put her on the Turkish protocol, which is, a combination of drugs that they give to everybody in Turkey. And within a day, she was better. She never had a problem. And she doesn't seem to have had a neurologic issue. But COVID-19 causes brain fog. And it's a persistent brain fog in some folks. If you layer that on top of the social isolation, that's a 1-2 punch many people cannot deal with. I had a doctor at my hospital, a very popular doctor, commit suicide. She was an ER doc, perfectly normal before COVID. She got COVID, and her father's a doctor too. He came on my show to talk about it. She never recovered, and then she took her life.
Sorry to hear that about your mom. You talk about even when it comes to cultural competence in the mental health space, we need more mental health care workers that are Black because the numbers are lower than I think in, the other doctors. I think it's like 3%.
Yeah, and African Americans, Quincy Jones taught me this when I was still a resident. But his mom had schizophrenia, and they just sort of sent her away. Never told anyone why. Just never saw her again. And he said that's how they used to deal with it back in the 40s and 50s. They just sent people away. They disappeared. And that's not how he managed mental health. And we got to change. That's a huge cultural barrier.
Dr. As people apply for this scholarship program that you have for more diversity in the field of medicine?
So there's two things we're doing. There's hashtag more Black docs. If you or you go to my website, you'll see all the information. I'm going to give some scholarships out to kids who to young men and women who are being doctors, just to help them with all their expenses. And then I'm also having mentoring programs. I'm having a lot of doctors of color have seminars with students, high school students and college students, just to teach them about what's available. Listen, you don't have to go off and be a heart surgeon and spend your whole life training. There are jobs that exist in healthcare that are fantastic. They pay well, very rewarding. And again, you'll save lives. And we need to get people of color interested in those jobs. Nursing is a great profession.
I have these 3 friends. They wrote this book. I don't know if you know them. They're the 3 doctors. It's called The Pact. And they're from New Jersey, Newark, and East Orange. They made a pact when they were in high school to become doctors. And all 3 of them, young Black men, all 3 of them became doctors. And they're pretty amazing. So, and I know they've been.
If you can connect me to them, I got you guys doing bookings for me. This is fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a New York Times bestseller. They've been on Oprah and everything. One of them actually went to jail for attempted murder and still became a doctor after that. One's a dentist, one works in the ER, the other one's a general practitioner.
They sound perfect for my show, I'll tell you. I love those stories. There's so much to feel good about. So many people who've been so resilient and bounced back. So there were battlefield commissions during COVID-19 where people basically they just did things they never thought they could do to make the world better. And I want to celebrate those folks because we need more heroes in America.
What do you think about the way we communicate? Like, do you think this is going to have an impact on us, the way we're doing it? Like, I hate Zoom. I'm being honest, I got Zoom fatigue. I'm tired of it. Do you think this is going to impact something in the future?
Oh, for sure. There are a lot of people who aren't going to commute an hour on average every day to go to work. My own kids, they're all, my son Oliver, who's an athlete, he's playing sports at Harvard. They got canceled. His whole season's canceled. He's done Zoom. He hates it like you. One of my daughters is a banker in the city, and she says they don't have to go back to work, but she did because she couldn't stand being on Zoom all the time. So I think there'll be some folks who take advantage of the opportunity to not have to be in a city setting, but most Americans are going to want to go back to being human beings. And if you look at the history of pandemics, and humans have suffered through pandemics all of our known history. Not just the bubonic plague and the Spanish influenza, but literally go back in time, you find that pandemics affected us continuously. We go through a period of economic crisis, social upheaval, and then we go back to a new, better version of who we are. So that's what we're going to do.
I was going to ask, the governor just said he's not banning Halloween or trick-or-treating. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's safe for kids to be going house to house, ringing people's doorbells? Is that safe?
Well, I think you got to have a different way of Halloweening. I don't want them congregating in a super spreader moment. Listen, there are only two things we have to do to keep this thing at bay. Wear masks when we're around other people and avoid super spreader moments where you got 50 people crowded into a small, poorly ventilated space and one person's ill and gets everybody else sick. So trick or treat, outdoor activity. Assuming the weather's reasonable, if you can have people keep the candy outside the door and then you socially distance so the kids come take the candy and walk out. There's no cases, not one that we know of food spreading COVID. You cannot eat COVID and get sick that we know of. So I feel pretty good about it. I think the governor's doing the right thing. And we got to draw a line somewhere. I mean, right. I don't want us living in fear. I want my kids and grandkids able to go out there and some sense of normalcy without doing dumb things. I mean, I'm not going to have a mosh pit dive.
Okay.
Right. But I think they can do a lot of other things safely.
Now, I have a question. I saw some reports saying that if you're going to have sex, you should wear a mask with somebody that, you haven't been quarantined with. Is that effective?
I don't think it's going to be impactful. And you know what the odds, if you're married and your spouse gets COVID-19, you know what the odds are that you'll get COVID-19?
What's that?
15%, 1 in 7.
Really?
So I don't think that you're going to get a lot of benefit from wearing a mask. You're sure you're getting rid of the fun, despite whatever shenanigans Charlamagne tries. I'll tell you something. I got my bloods drawn on Monday for a brand new kind of blood test that I'll have the results by tomorrow. I want to know if I have T cells. Let me explain this to everybody. So antibodies, which is what you make after you've had the infection, and I don't have any, but those antibodies theoretically will protect you for a couple months after you've had COVID-19. But the Germans and the Swedes believe that 1/3 of their population are already protected against COVID-19 because in past years, they've had a common cold with a coronavirus, a cousin of the current COVID-19. And that gives them protection because they find protection against this COVID-19 from blood samples from 2-3 years ago. So I'm getting my blood checked to see if I have T cells that may have protected me because some of my kids had COVID-19 and I didn't get it. So right. I'm thinking the reason that married couples have, not able, because you think if you're married to someone and they get COVID-19, you're surely going to get it. Right. But because it's unlikely you'll get it, it means that a lot of us have prior exposure in some capacity. It might be that 1/3 of New York is already immune or not going to get a bad case of COVID-19 because they had a common cold 2 years ago.
Didn't they say you could get it twice? I was reading that also.
There have been 3 cases in the world that I know of people getting it twice. It happens. It's just not that common. But I do believe that over time, your immune system will forget the COVID-19. You'll get it again, but hopefully we'll have the vaccine by then.
All right. Well, Doc, we appreciate you for joining us. And thank you for always being our resident doctor.
Congratulations on another season, another 2 seasons again on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That is amazing. Thank you, Dr. Oz.
I think you should switch it up, and instead of putting your handprint, you should put your ass cheeks in the concrete. That'd be dope.
I'm going to invite you out. I'm going to do just that if you'll do it with me, Charlamagne.
Do what with you?
He wants the anal swab. That's what he wants to do.
The anal swab on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I'm going to put the actual anal imprint right there.
There you go. That'll be dope. You can tell whose butt it is by the bigger hole.
Oh, before I forget, I almost forgot. I've been talking about sleep all this time. Uh-huh. I launched a sleep line. I finally put my name on something. You guys have been telling me to do it.
Wow.
It's called Dr. Oz Good Life. And it's an adjustable, it's a bunch of things. But the most important thing, we just released the data this week in major sleep studies. We showed that using an adjustable bed reduces snoring and improves sleep. So the people who are the snorers out there, if you gently elevate the head of the bed, you can actually reduce your snoring dramatically and improve the quality of your sleep. The problem, of course, is these things have always been expensive. So I went to the biggest seller on Amazon, and these guys are making these things very affordable. So drozgoodlife.com, or come to my site, you'll see it there. And
I see the pillows. Okay. All right.
They're pillows. There's lots of good things out there. But most importantly, it'll get you to sleep, because if you sleep, you won't eat, which means you'll lose weight.
There you go.
Thank you, Dr. Oz.
Dr. Oz, it's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.